What would you do if tomorrow you woke up millions richer than today? Would you tell everyone you know, or would you keep this life-changing secret to yourself? Have you ever wondered why those who suddenly acquire wealth often lose it just as quickly? Imagine this scenario. Overnight, fortune smiles upon you. Perhaps that cryptocurrency investment you made years ago suddenly skyrockets, or the startup you've been quietly building on weekends receives an unexpected acquisition offer. Maybe an inheritance you never anticipated lands in your bank account. The rush is intoxicating, isn't it? The sudden removal of financial constraints, the feeling of infinite possibilities. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Has this ever happened to you? That moment when you feel an overwhelming urge to share good news with everyone around you? It's human nature. We want to celebrate, to be congratulated, to feel validated for our good fortune. But what if I told you this natural instinct could be the very thing that destroys everything you've gained? Machiavelli, the master strategist from the Renaissance, understood a truth most of us overlook. Fortune is fickle and unpredictable. She favors the bold, but abandons the unprepared. When wealth suddenly appears, it doesn't transform who you are, it exposes you, amplifying every existing trait, habit, and weakness. What feels like a blessing can swiftly become a curse if you're not prepared for the responsibility it carries. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might fundamentally change how you think about wealth, success, and who you share it with. The first principle you must understand is what I call the gravity of wealth. Contrary to popular belief, sudden riches don't grant freedom. They create gravity that pulls others into your orbit. Like a planet suddenly gaining mass, you'll find friends, family, even strangers being drawn towards you, not necessarily for who you are, but for what you now possess. What most newly wealthy individuals fail to comprehend is how this gravitational shift fundamentally alters all their relationships. The dynamics change in ways both subtle and profound. People who once treated you as an equal may now see you as a resource, a solution to their problems, or a target for their resentments. Think about this. If tomorrow you became wealthy beyond measure, who would be the first person you'd tell? Your spouse? Your best friend? Your parents? What would change in those relationships the moment the words left your mouth? The answer might disturb you more than you expect. If you found value in these Machiavellian principles, hit that subscribe button to join our community of strategic thinkers exploring the hidden rules of wealth and power. And here's where we encounter one of the most shocking revelations in the study of wealth. The faster fortune is acquired, the faster it tends to evaporate. Have you ever wondered why nearly 70% of lottery winners end up broke within 7 years? It's a pattern so consistent it borders on predictable. Studies of those who suddenly acquire millions reveal a disturbing truth. More than half end up divorced, battling addiction, or filing for bankruptcy within just a few short years. Their financial journey follows an almost perfect bell curve: rapid ascent, brief plateau, devastating decline. The hidden truth behind this phenomenon isn't about the money itself. It's about a fundamental mindset error. They mistake wealth for wisdom. They believe that because they possess resources, they've somehow transformed into someone who understands how to manage them. This is the same illusion that doomed countless heirs to family fortunes throughout history. Machiavelli observed this same pattern in rulers who inherited kingdoms they didn't build. "He who becomes prince through fortune alone," he wrote, "will maintain his power only so long as fortune favors him." The same applies to money. If you didn't cultivate the discipline that creates wealth, the fortune will erode faster than you can spend it. The decisions you make in the first 90 days after acquiring sudden wealth often determine whether you'll still have it 5 years later. And the most pivotal decision of all might surprise you. It's not about investments or financial advisors. It's about silence. Your greatest advantage with new wealth is complete and total discretion. Our culture constantly pushes us to broadcast every achievement, to post every win, to wear success like a crown. But Machiavelli would caution that those who shout their victories merely invite conquest. The moment you expose wealth, you expose weakness. This represents a profound impact on how you must navigate your new reality. The truly powerful throughout history understood a principle I call stealth wealth, the art of owning everything while appearing to own nothing. Their neighbors think they live modestly, yet their influence stretches far beyond what's visible. Consider the most effective power players in any field. They rarely flash their resources. Instead, they move silently through the world, making decisions and wielding influence without drawing unnecessary attention. They understand that visibility creates vulnerability. This approach requires a complete transformation in how you view status and recognition. Instead of seeking validation through displaying wealth, you derive satisfaction from the private knowledge of your position and the freedom it provides. The journey becomes internal rather than external, focused on building genuine security rather than appearing secure. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic by examining the specific strategies, the wise use to maintain this protective silence while still leveraging their resources effectively. Because understanding the concept is only the beginning. Implementing it requires specific tactics that few ever master. If this perspective on wealth has shifted your thinking, write in the comments, "Silence is strategy." Let me illuminate this concept of stealth wealth with more clarity. Throughout history, the most enduring dynasties weren't those who displayed their fortunes most lavishly. They were those who mastered the art of invisible influence. They understood a fundamental paradox. True power doesn't announce itself. It operates behind carefully constructed facades. Consider the old European banking families who financed kings and wars for centuries. They didn't live in the grandest palaces or wear the most ostentatious clothing. Instead, they cultivated an image of respectable modesty, while their network of influence stretched across continents. This wasn't mere humility, it was calculated strategy. The revelation here is profound. Those who flaunt power and wealth often create the very conditions for their downfall. Every display becomes an invitation for envy, scrutiny, and ultimately attack. Meanwhile, those who operate within the shadows maintain control precisely because they don't appear threatening or worth challenging. This mindset shift represents one of the most crucial transformations for anyone who acquires sudden fortune. You must redefine what success looks like, not as external validation, but as freedom of movement, choice, and impact without unnecessary friction. But perhaps nothing illustrates the dangers of visible wealth more vividly than the cautionary tale of Jack Whittaker. In 2002, he won $315 million in the Powerball lottery, one of the largest undivided jackpots in American history. Jack didn't just accept his winnings, he embraced the identity of a wealthy benefactor with religious fervor. He appeared on television shows, held press conferences, and became instantly recognizable. His journey began with extraordinary generosity, handing out cash to strangers, funding churches, buying homes for friends and family. The public adored him, newspapers celebrated him. For a moment, he seemed to defy the statistics. Behind the scenes, however, a darker story was unfolding. The constant attention brought criminals to his doorstep. He was robbed multiple times, People he'd never met filed frivolous lawsuits. His previously stable marriage collapsed under the pressure. Friends who'd known him for decades began to see him only as a resource, not a person. Most devastating of all was what happened to his beloved granddaughter. Suddenly, surrounded by people, attracted to the family's new wealth, she spiraled into addiction and was eventually found dead from an overdose, a tragedy Jack would later attribute directly to the money and the environment it created. When interviewed years later, Whitaker made a confession that reveals the hidden truth about sudden fortune. "I wish I'd torn up that ticket," he said. This wasn't hyperbole. He genuinely believed his life was better before the money came, when he was just a successful businessman with a normal family, unknown to the world at large. His story embodies Machiavelli's warning: visibility creates vulnerability. The decisions Jack made in the crucial early days after his win set in motion consequences he could never have anticipated. His experience serves as a powerful reminder of why discretion isn't just advisable, it's essential for survival. Now, let's explore the specific structures and strategies that allow wealth to remain protected while still functioning effectively in the modern world. If you've ever noticed the quiet millionaire next door who drives a modest car while owning half the town, type "I see the pattern" in the comments. This brings us to the fundamental principle that underlies all wealth preservation, the rule of concealment. Just as Machiavelli advised princes to hide their true strength until it was fully consolidated, the same wisdom applies to fortune. You must conceal your wealth, not out of some moral imperative toward humility, but because secrecy is the foundation of survival in a world that naturally resents success. The hidden truth most don't realize is that humans are fundamentally comparative creatures. We don't judge our position in absolute terms, but relative to those around us. When someone in our social circle suddenly rises dramatically above the rest, it triggers an almost primal response, a mixture of envy, resentment, and a subconscious desire to see them return to the previous equilibrium. This psychological reality means that in our age of radical transparency and constant social media exposure, anonymity becomes your armor. The wealthy who thrive understand that privacy isn't just a preference, it's a strategic necessity. While everyone else races to document every achievement and purchase, the truly sophisticated move in the opposite direction, systematically reducing their visibility as their resources grow. New to the channel? Subscribe now for more insights on building and preserving wealth through timeless wisdom that most will never discover. This approach requires a complete mindset transformation. You must resist the temptation to seek validation through displays of success. Instead, find satisfaction in the private knowledge of your position and the freedom it provides. The journey becomes internal rather than external, focused on building genuine security rather than appearing secure. But here's where most people make a critical mistake. They believe privacy is simply about who you tell about your wealth. The deeper revelation is that true privacy isn't just about social discretion, it's about legal and financial architecture. Privacy must be structured, not just practiced. This brings us to the concept of the legal fortress. When sudden fortune arrives, the first person you should contact is not a friend or family member, it's an attorney who specializes in asset protection and privacy law. This isn't about tax avoidance. It's about creating structures that shield your wealth from unnecessary visibility and potential predators. The sophisticated wealthy understand a principle that most never learn. Real wealth is never directly owned. Instead, it flows through carefully designed legal channels, trusts, foundations, holding companies, and other entities that create distance between your name and your assets. These structures serve as your modern-day castle walls, protecting what you've built from those who would take it. When Machiavelli advised rulers to govern through intermediaries, he was describing this same principle. Power works best when it flows through layers that conceal its source. In today's terms, that means establishing legal vehicles that allow you to control resources without personally owning them in public records. This approach represents a profound shift in how we think about possession. Most people believe ownership means having your name on the title. The wealthy know better. They understand that control matters more than nominal ownership and privacy more than recognition. Let's explore how these structures work in practice and the specific steps you should take when fortune suddenly appears at your doorstep. If this approach to wealth preservation resonates with you, write "privacy is power" in the comments below. Imagine this scenario. You've just secured your fortune behind the proper legal structures. Your assets are protected, your privacy ensured. Now comes a decision that reveals the profound difference between those who maintain wealth and those who lose it. What will you do with your time? Conventional wisdom suggests you should immediately quit your job, abandon your business, and embrace a life of leisure. This advice represents perhaps the most dangerous mindset trap of sudden wealth. The hidden truth is that the greatest threat to your fortune isn't excessive spending, it's stagnation. Machiavelli observed this phenomenon in rulers who, once comfortable in their position, grew soft and complacent. Idleness, he wrote, makes men weak. The same principle applies to wealth. When purpose and challenge disappear, so too does the mental discipline that allowed you to handle money effectively in the first place. This insight demands a complete transformation in how you view work. Rather than seeing it as something to escape from, recognize it as the very activity that keeps your mind sharp, your decisions disciplined, and your ego appropriately humble. The wealthy who thrive don't abandon work. They elevate it from necessity to choice. The key distinction lies in autonomy. You should absolutely quit whatever drains your spirit or restricts your freedom. The toxic workplace, the soul-crushing commute, the business partner who limits your vision. But never quit building, creating, or contributing. The moment you stop producing value is the moment your fortune begins its inevitable decline. Look behind the scenes at the wealthiest individuals in history, from the Renaissance bankers to modern tech billionaires. What's striking isn't their lavish consumption, but their relentless productivity. They continue working, not from financial necessity, but from an understanding that meaningful activity is the foundation of lasting prosperity. This brings us to an equally critical principle: the power of focus. The journey of wealth preservation reveals a counterintuitive truth. Those who scatter their resources across many ventures typically achieve less than those who concentrate intensely on one domain. Study the patterns of the truly wealthy, and you'll notice they don't diversify their attention, they unify it. They identify a single fortress, one business, one investment strategy, one area of expertise, and fortify it methodically before expanding. This approach contradicts the impulse many feel when sudden wealth arrives, the desire to try everything at once. Consider figures like Warren Buffett or Jeff Bezos. Their impact doesn't come from dabbling in dozens of ventures simultaneously. It comes from an almost obsessive focus on their core domain, expanded systematically over decades. They understand what Machiavelli knew intuitively, that focus is a form of power and consistency a weapon few possess. The practical implication is clear. When fortune arrives, resist the temptation to spread your energy across too many projects. Instead, identify your primary strength and deepen it. The person who divides attention too broadly invites collapse through lack of mastery and diluted resources. Your wealth should concentrate your power, not disperse it. The moment fortune enters your life, your decisions about work and focus become exponentially more consequential. While others use wealth as an excuse to retreat, the wise use it as a platform to advance more deliberately than ever before. If you've noticed this pattern of focused work among the truly successful, drop "focus is freedom" in the comments. Now that you've established your legal fortress and maintained your productive momentum, it's time to address the silent predators lurking within your financial ecosystem. Machiavelli warned rulers to extinguish internal dangers before external ones, because a disease seen early is easy to cure, but if neglected, becomes incurable. In wealth management, that disease has a name: debt. The hidden truth that many newly wealthy never grasp is that high-interest obligations are more dangerous than market crashes or bad investments. They are silent assassins that feed on indifference, quietly consuming your fortune while you focus elsewhere. Consider this revelation. A credit card with a 20% interest rate will devour your capital faster than most thieves. This principle demands immediate action. The moment fortune arrives, before you invest a single dollar or make any other financial move, eliminate your high-interest debt. This isn't about moral virtue or financial dogma, it's about mathematical certainty. Paying off a 20% interest rate is effectively earning a 20% return, guaranteed, with zero risk. No investment can match that combination of yield and safety. The transformation here isn't just financial, it's psychological. When you eliminate debt, you remove the subtle anxiety that gnaws at every decision. You silence the inner voice that whispers, "This might not last," whenever you consider the future. Without that background noise, you begin to think like a sovereign instead of a servant, focused on building rather than escaping. Behind the scenes of every great fortune is this fundamental principle. True wealth begins not with acquisition, but with elimination, removing the financial parasites that would otherwise drain your resources unnoticed. Only then can your capital truly work for you rather than against you. But even with your fortress intact and your debt eliminated, you'll soon face a challenge far more complex than financial management: the emotional dynamics that sudden wealth creates in your relationships. This is where the journey becomes truly treacherous, because the greatest threats to your prosperity aren't markets or taxes, they're the emotions of other people. When you acquire wealth, you don't just gain resources, you awaken hunger in those around you. This hunger isn't always conscious or malicious. It's a natural human response to proximity with abundance. Friends, family, partners, people who genuinely care about you will experience a subtle shift in how they see you and what they expect from you. Machiavelli observed this phenomenon in political power, noting that men are more ready to offend one who desires to be loved than one who wishes to be feared. In wealth, this translates to a disturbing pattern. Those who attempt to please everyone with their fortune typically lose both their money and their relationships. The difficult revelation here is that people close to you will create narratives to justify their expectations. "You wouldn't have made it without me. You were just lucky. You owe me this." These stories aren't rational. They're emotional justifications for desires that feel entirely legitimate to those who hold them. This reality requires a complete mindset recalibration. You must recognize that preserving relationships in the presence of wealth means establishing clear boundaries before they're tested. Because once expectations form, any limit you set will feel like a betrayal rather than a reasonable position. The wise understand that money doesn't create problems in relationships. It reveals the fault lines that were always present, but previously hidden beneath the surface. How you navigate these emotional currents will determine whether your wealth becomes a blessing or a curse. If you've ever noticed how money changes relationships, type "boundaries protect both sides" in the comments. This brings us to perhaps the most counterintuitive principle in the Machiavellian approach to wealth: Never lend money to friends or family. This rule often triggers resistance because it seems cold, even callous. But examine the hidden truth beneath the surface. The moment you transform a relationship into a financial transaction, you fundamentally alter its nature in ways that cannot be undone. When you lend money to someone close to you, you create a power dynamic that breeds resentment regardless of outcome. If they fail to repay, you feel betrayed, and they feel shame. If they succeed in repaying, they often feel a subtle form of ownership, as though they've purchased the right to ask again. Either way, the relationship suffers a wound that rarely heals completely. The revelation here is profound. By attempting to help through lending, you often harm the very connection you're trying to preserve. Machiavelli understood this paradox when he warned princes never to give what they cannot take back without hatred. The same wisdom applies to your fortune. Once you establish the pattern of financial rescue, breaking it becomes nearly impossible without conflict. This doesn't mean abandoning compassion. Instead, it requires a transformation in how you express it. Practice what I call strategic compassion. If someone you truly care about faces genuine hardship, give freely but only once, with absolute clarity that this is not the first installment in an ongoing arrangement. Make it explicit. I'm gifting this to you, but with one condition: you never ask again. This approach may seem harsh initially, but it represents the highest form of integrity. You maintain generosity without creating dependency, and you preserve the relationship by establishing clear boundaries before resentment can take root. Behind the scenes of every healthy relationship involving wealth lies this foundation of clarity, the mutual understanding that love and money remain separate domains. Now, let's explore an equally critical principle that separates those who maintain wealth from those who lose it: the discipline of living off yield rather than principle. The mindset shift here is viewing your fortune not as a sum to be spent, but as a system to be preserved. The rich who stay rich treat money like farmland. They harvest without destroying the soil. They understand that their capital is their kingdom, and they protect it with the same vigilance a ruler would defend their borders. They live comfortably, even luxuriously, but only from what their assets generate, never from the assets themselves. This approach requires a precise calculation, your freedom number. Take your desired annual lifestyle cost and multiply it by 25. That's the capital you must preserve at all costs. For example, if you need $200,000 yearly to live your ideal life, your throne requires $5 million in protected capital. Even if you haven't reached that number yet, this principle should guide every financial decision. The journey of wealth preservation reveals this stark truth. Every choice you make regarding money is either an investment in sovereignty or a surrender to impulse. Each dollar you maintain, growing, multiplies your time, peace, and options. Each dollar consumed without purpose diminishes your future freedom. Look at the patterns of generational wealth, from the banking dynasties of Europe to the industrial families of America. Their longevity comes not from restricting pleasure, but from understanding its proper source. They indulge from overflow, never from foundation. This discipline represents the difference between temporary and permanent prosperity. Now, let's explore how to structure these assets to maximize both protection and growth. If you recognize the wisdom in treating wealth as a system rather than a sum, write "harvest, don't consume" in the comments. Now that you've mastered the art of protecting your principal, the question becomes: how do you deploy your capital to create a sustainable kingdom that generates wealth without exposing you to unnecessary risk? The answer lies in treating investment not as gambling, but as governance. You're no longer merely a participant. In markets, you're the architect of your own financial state. Machiavelli advised that wise rulers must never rely solely on fortune's favor, but on systems and structures that endure beyond their presence. The same principle applies to your wealth. Without a coherent strategy, even the greatest fortune becomes chaos waiting to happen. The transformation required here is profound. You must shift from thinking like a worker to thinking like a sovereign. Every dollar becomes a soldier in your army, and every market a potential battlefield. If you deploy your forces recklessly, you lose both capital and command. But organize them into strategic divisions, each with its own role, and you build an empire capable of withstanding wars, recessions, and the inevitable tests of time. This is what the truly elite understand. The genuine 1% aren't just rich, they are strategic. They move through markets the way kings move through kingdoms, calculated, deliberate, detached from the panic that consumes ordinary investors. Behind the scenes, their portfolios reflect not just diversification, but philosophy, a worldview made manifest through asset allocation. Consider structuring your empire this way. First, establish your core growth engine through broad, diversified equity indexes. These represent the productive capacity of human innovation and enterprise, the army that expands your borders year after year. Historically, this domain has averaged close to 9% annual returns over decades. Balance this aggression with the diplomatic cause of your kingdom, bonds. They produce less dramatic returns, perhaps 4 to 5%, but they maintain stability when chaos reigns. They're the counterweight that keeps your empire from overextending. Next, secure your tangible foundation through real estate. Kings and merchants throughout history anchored their wealth in property because, as Machiavelli observed, men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony. Well-chosen estate produces both income and appreciation, grounding your wealth in physical reality. Add to this a limited exposure to speculative opportunities, your reconnaissance force exploring new territories. In our era, this means assets like cryptocurrency or emerging technologies. The key insight: limit these to 5 to 10% of your holdings. Treat them as scouts, not the main army. Finally, maintain substantial liquid reserves, your peace fund that allows you to remain calm when others panic and to acquire assets when they're undervalued during market disruptions. This diversified approach creates a kingdom that generates wealth from multiple sources, providing both growth and stability. But even as you perfect this system, remember that the final evolution in the journey of wealth lies not in acquisition, but in purpose. The ultimate revelation is this: the true measure of wealth is not what you consume, but what you create. Once your fortress is secure, look beyond yourself. Invest in ideas, people, and causes that will outlive you. The wealthy who find genuine fulfillment understand that money's greatest power isn't purchasing luxury, it's creating legacy. When your basic needs and desires are met, wealth transforms from a tool of consumption to a vehicle for impact. It becomes not about what you can take from the world, but what you can build within it that continues after you're gone. If you believe that true wealth lies in what you create rather than what you consume, write "Legacy outlasts luxury" in the comments. In closing, remember what Machiavelli himself observed: it is better to act and repent than not to act and regret. The principles we've explored today aren't abstract philosophy, they're practical wisdom that has preserved fortunes across centuries. Whether you're currently building wealth or have already found it, these strategies offer a path not just to financial security, but to genuine freedom. If something in this conversation resonated with you, perhaps you recognize patterns you've observed in your own life or in those around you. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment with "Fortune favors the silent" if you made it this far. Your perspective adds valuable dimension to these ideas. I put these videos together because this knowledge fundamentally changed my own relationship with wealth and power, and the thoughtful comments and likes from this community tell me these insights are making a difference. If you found value here, that like button is the simplest way to help others discover these same principles. For those ready to move beyond theory into practice, I've created a detailed companion to this discussion that explores how to build wealth from the ground up using these same Machiavellian principles. It's waiting for you right here. Click and continue this journey with me. After all, understanding how to preserve wealth is valuable only if you first create it. I'll see you there.